She stood at the edge of the kitchen, sunlight hitting her hair just right, and whispered something that made the air catch in my chest. "Be good, or be mine." I froze, the words lingering longer than they should have. Her laugh, soft, knowing, a little dangerous, filled the small apartment. I wanted to step forward, to say something clever, anything at all, but my voice caught somewhere behind my ribs. I'd only been here a week, renting the tiny apartment above her brother's place. I knew her name, Elena, but I hadn't expected her to appear in my life like this, sudden and intense, a storm contained in a calm voice. She leaned against the counter, one hand brushing over the edge as if she could feel the tension humming between us. I felt it too, though I didn't understand it yet. Something about her, her calm, confident posture, the way her eyes lingered on me, made the floor feel like it had tilted slightly. "Coffee?" I finally managed, my voice cracking a little. She didn't answer immediately, just tilted her head, a smile tugging at the corner of her lips. There was a pause, too long, and yet perfectly measured. My stomach tightened, my palms damp, and I realized I hadn't even noticed my own heart racing until then. She walked closer, slower than necessary, just enough to let me see the curve of her shoulder under the light blouse she wore. I wanted to tell myself it was nothing, that it was just her being friendly, but my body betrayed me, leaning in, wanting, needing. "You're nervous," she said, a soft accusation, and my ears burned. I tried to brush it off, laugh, something. I haven't had coffee yet," I said lamely. Her eyes softened, and for a moment I felt exposed, as though she could read all the unspoken things about me I didn't even know myself. She set down a mug in front of me, fingers brushing mine, just briefly, but long enough to send a shiver up my arm. I wanted to pull back, but I couldn't. She leaned over slightly, just enough that I caught the scent of her perfume, something floral but with an edge I couldn't name, and my throat went dry. "You don't have to be perfect," she said quietly, eyes dropping to the steam curling from the cup. "Just be you." The words seemed harmless, but I felt the weight behind them, the hint of a challenge, a promise wrapped in soft warning. I swallowed, tried to focus on her words instead of the way my chest felt too tight, or the way her glance lingered longer than it should have. She laughed again, small, teasing, but it sounded almost like a question. "Do you even know what you're doing yet?" I wanted to answer honestly. I wanted to tell her that I'd been thinking about her since the moment I first saw her in the hallway, that I'd caught myself staring more than once, that there was a pull in me I didn't have words for. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded, muttered something about needing sugar, and tried to act casual. She tilted her head, studying me, and the silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable and delicious all at once. It was a quiet, perfect tension, the kind that made the world shrink down to just the space between us. Then the moment broke. A sharp chime at the doorbell startled both of us. She froze, her gaze snapping toward the sound, and I realized I was holding my breath. Something about the way she looked at me now, something unspoken, urgent, dangerous, promising. I wanted to ask who it was. I wanted to touch her hand again. I wanted her to be mine, though I didn't even know if that was allowed. And in that frozen second, with her eyes still on me and the doorbell ringing, I knew that nothing was going to stay quiet for long. The doorbell stopped ringing, but the echo of it lingered in the apartment, a reminder that someone, or something, was out there, waiting, and not us. She hadn't moved, still standing near the counter, eyes tracing the rim of her coffee mug as though it held answers she wasn't ready to give. I watched her, realizing how little I actually knew about her. She was Elena, my landlord's sister, but that was only the surface. There was a quiet weight behind her gaze, the kind that suggested past storms. I tried to imagine what they were. Had she loved and lost? Had someone ever really stayed, really seen her? My mind wandered to the subtle lines near her eyes, the ones that weren't just from age but from the long hours of worrying, of caring too much, of maybe loving too deeply. I remembered the tiny scar on her hand, the one she always seemed to hide in plain sight. The first day I'd bumped into her in the hallway, she'd brushed it off with a joke, but I had caught the brief flicker of vulnerability beneath the smile. And suddenly, in that quiet kitchen, it all made sense why my chest ached when she looked at me. She wasn't just a woman. She was a lifetime of stories I'd never heard, and I wanted to be part of them. And yet, the risk was obvious. I was barely out of college, still fumbling through life, and she was established, confident, untouchable in so many ways. The age gap wasn't just numbers. It was experience, expectation, the unspoken rules we weren't supposed to cross. Every inch between us felt electric, but dangerous. And maybe that was why it pulled me in even harder. I caught myself staring at her again. She noticed, of course, she always did. There was that soft sigh, barely audible, as if she felt the same pull but refused to admit it. I wondered if she ever regretted choices she'd made, if she'd loved someone who hadn't been ready, hadn't measured up, hadn't known how to stay. I wanted to ask her, but the words stuck. Instead, I fumbled with my cup, my fingers brushing hers again, not by accident this time. A spark ran up my arm. She didn't pull away, just let her hand linger for a moment longer, as though weighing something she couldn't name. For a fleeting second, I thought about telling her everything, how I'd been thinking about her since that first day in the hallway, how I'd imagined this moment, this closeness, for nights I wasn't supposed to. But I didn't. The truth hovered in the space between us, heavy and unsaid. Instead, she smiled, not at me, but with me, a quiet acknowledgement of something we both knew but couldn't voice yet. And in that silence, I realized she felt it too, the tension, the pull, the reckless possibility of what could happen if we gave in. She shifted slightly, her hand brushing mine as she reached for her mug again. It was a small, almost insignificant touch, but it carried a weight that left me dizzy, wanting more and terrified at the same time. And when our eyes met, lingering longer than polite society allowed, I knew we were standing at the edge of something we couldn't ignore, something that could either consume us or define us. The sound of her laugh broke the quiet again, soft and teasing, and I wanted to tell her I was already lost, but instead, I just let my gaze hold hers. And somewhere in that stillness, it felt like the world had shrunk to just the two of us. I hadn't expected him, my roommate, to come home early, backpacks slung over one shoulder, keys jingling. The door burst open before I could warn Elena, and I felt my stomach twist. My pulse raced. She froze mid-step, one hand still brushing mine from the coffee table. "Oh, hey," I said quickly, stepping back as if that could erase the electricity lingering in the air. Her eyes flicked toward the door, sharp, alert, almost defensive. I hadn't realized how exposed we were until now. "Everything okay?" my roommate asked, dropping his bag by the door. He looked between us with a casual curiosity, but I could tell something had shifted. Something I couldn't name. Elena straightened, a practiced calm settling over her like armor. "Yes, of course. Just coffee," she said, voice light but tight at the edges. I tried to nod, swallowing hard, but my throat felt constricted. I could feel her eyes on me, burning, not accusatory, but intense, magnetic. I wanted to step closer, to lean into her warmth, but a voice in my head kept screaming, "Don't, don't, don't." My roommate left to unpack, giving us space, and the moment returned, heavy, impossible. Elena moved slightly closer to me, brushing her fingers against mine again, and I felt heat crawl up my neck. Her eyes softened but carried that warning, the one I didn't know if I could obey. I opened my mouth, then stopped. Words felt dangerous. What if this is a mistake? What if we can't stop? The thought twisted inside me. She tilted her head, a sly, knowing smile tugging at her lips. "You've been avoiding something," she said softly, almost teasing, but I heard the edge beneath it, the challenge. "I don't know what you mean," I said, fumbling. I wanted to reach for her, but guilt coiled tight in my chest. My mind raced. "You're 22. She's..." The words refused to form. A silence fell, and in it, every unspoken confession felt louder than anything we could say. Then, as if drawn by some invisible force, our faces edged closer. Too close, my pulse hammering, every nerve alight. I could feel her breath, a little quickened, her hand brushing mine again, and I was drowning in the temptation. But then, she pulled back slightly, sharp, deliberate, like she'd snapped herself awake from a dream. Her eyes caught mine, full of longing and restraint all at once. "Not yet," she whispered. Just 2 words, and it felt like the world had stopped. I wanted to argue, to insist, to close the distance anyway, but I didn't. I nodded, even though every fiber of me wanted to defy her caution. The chime of her phone broke the spell. She glanced down at it, a flash of worry crossing her features. I didn't see the message, but her hand trembled slightly as she unlocked it. And for a moment, I wondered what it could say, who it could be from. That made her pause, that made me realize how fragile this connection was, how much risk we were courting with every stolen second. Her gaze flicked back to me, hesitant, electric, and I realized we were both teetering on the edge, pulled together by something neither of us could name, yet painfully aware of the world waiting to judge, to interrupt, to demand we step back. And in that suspended breath, I knew we weren't ready to let go, even if we should. I hadn't meant to notice him, her colleague from work, standing by the elevator, but I did. His laugh carried down the hallway, casual, familiar. And when her head turned toward him, something in the way she smiled, it wasn't a friendly smile. It was warmer, closer, the kind that made my chest tighten, my stomach churn. I wanted to step away, pretend I didn't care. But my feet stayed planted. My heart thumped so loud I was sure she could hear it, and maybe she did, because her gaze flicked to mine. That subtle flash of recognition, curiosity mixed with something I didn't want to name, hit me like a punch. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice lighter than usual, but it carried an edge, a tension I hadn't heard before. "Yeah," I said too quickly, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Just didn't expect him to be here." She tilted her head, studying me, and I felt like I was being read, stripped bare. I wanted to tell her, to confess the jealousy knotting itself in my chest, the irrational, desperate need to be the one she smiled at like that. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. The elevator dinged, and he stepped inside. She waved, casual, friendly, and I watched her lips curve into that same smile again. My hands curled into fists at my sides. I hated myself for feeling it, jealous, possessive, reckless, but I couldn't stop it. She noticed my tension. I saw the subtle narrowing of her eyes, the soft bite of her lip. And then she did something I didn't expect. She reached for my hand. Just a light touch, almost accidental, but deliberate enough to remind me I wasn't invisible. That even with him there, I still mattered. The hallway felt smaller, the air heavier. I wanted to pull her into the nearest doorway, press my lips to hers, scream that I was already consumed. But something stopped me, the fear, the age difference, the unspoken rules that kept us teetering on the edge. You're different," she said quietly, almost a whisper, as if testing herself. Her eyes searched mine, vulnerable, daring. "I shouldn't." I stepped closer, closing the small distance between us. Her perfume was intoxicating, pulling me in. My voice came out hoarse. "I don't care." She froze. The words hung in the space between us, heavier than either of us expected. Her hand lingered on mine, trembling slightly. Her lips parted, maybe to say something, maybe to stop herself, but the sound never came. For a moment, everything stopped. The distant elevator, the echo of footsteps, the world beyond the hallway, all irrelevant. There was only her, only me, only the impossible pull between us. Then her phone buzzed again. She glanced down, just for a second, and that second felt like an eternity. I wanted to snatch it from her, rip away the distraction, force her to stay in this suspended moment. Her gaze lifted back to mine, intense, desperate, and I felt it. The silent plea, the admission neither of us could voice, the edge of something that would change everything if crossed. Her phone buzzed again, but this time she didn't silence it. She stared at the screen too long, her lips tightening, her shoulders stiff. I caught only a glimpse, a name, half a sentence, but it was enough to slice through me. Dinner tonight. Don't forget. Love you? I froze. My pulse dropped into my stomach. Married. The word hit me like ice water. Elena. My voice cracked. She shoved the phone into her bag quickly, as if hiding the evidence would erase what I'd seen. Her breath was uneven, and for the first time since I'd met her, she looked cornered. Not confident, not playful. Cornered. It's not, she began, but stopped. Her eyes darted toward the floor. You don't understand. My chest tightened. I wanted to look away, to pretend I hadn't seen, but the truth had already sunk in. All this time. The touches, the glances, the way she whispered. And yet, someone else was waiting for her. Then explain it, I said, harsher than I intended. My voice echoed down the hallway. She winced, and for a moment, I regretted the sharpness. But I couldn't take it back. Not when my heart felt like it was clawing out of my ribs. Her silence dragged. Finally, she whispered, It's complicated. Complicated. The word felt like a slap. My stomach twisted. Was I just a distraction? A game? Elena. I stepped closer, my hand trembling as I reached for her arm. She didn't move, didn't pull away, but her eyes stayed locked on the floor. Why me, then? Why any of this? She finally looked up, and the rawness in her gaze made my chest ache even more. Because you see me. Not who I was. Not who I'm supposed to be. Just me. Her voice cracked. Do you know how rare that is? I swallowed hard, torn between anger and the unbearable pull I still felt toward her. My hands clenched. I wanted to walk away. I wanted to kiss her. Both impulses tore at me. You should have told me, I whispered. She nodded slowly, regret carving itself into the lines of her face. I know. For a moment, the world felt upside down. What I thought was safe, the late nights, the laughter, the touches that meant something more, suddenly wasn't. Every stolen glance carried a shadow now. And yet, even as betrayal simmered under my skin, I couldn't deny it, the longing, the desire, the way her presence still unraveled me. I should go, I muttered, but my feet didn't move. Her hand reached out, catching mine, trembling but firm. Don't, she whispered. Please. My heart pounded. This was madness. Wrong. Dangerous. And still, her eyes locked onto mine with a desperation that mirrored my own. And in that suspended breath, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure I could walk away anymore. Her hand was still on mine, fingers shaking, and I could feel the battle in her touch, push me away, pull me closer. My chest heaved, torn between fury and want, and for once, I didn't look away. Elena, he loves you. The words left my mouth before I could stop them, bitter and heavy. And you're here, with me. What does that even mean? Her eyes glistened. She didn't blink, didn't flinch. It means I'm selfish, she whispered. It means I wanted something that wasn't mine to want. You. The truth hit harder than any lie could. No pretense, no excuse, just raw, painful honesty. My breath caught, because in that moment I knew. She did want me. Not as a joke, not as a game. And it terrified her as much as it terrified me. I stepped closer, closing the fragile gap between us. Then stop lying to yourself, I said, my voice hoarse. Stop pretending you don't feel it. Her lips parted, trembling. She searched my face like she was memorizing me, like she already knew this was something that could break us both. Then she whispered, almost inaudible, I feel it every second I look at you. Something inside me cracked wide open. I should have pulled away. I should have respected the lines we weren't supposed to cross. But instead, my forehead leaned against hers, and for a long, trembling silence, we just breathed, two people standing in the wreckage of what they shouldn't want, clinging to it anyway. You make me forget the rules, she said finally, her voice breaking. And I've lived by rules my whole life. Then forget them, I whispered back. Her breath hitched. Tears gathered unshed, shining under the dim light. She was stronger than me, older, wiser, and yet, in that moment, she looked just as lost as I felt. And when it all burns down? When he finds out? When I destroy everything? I swallowed, my throat raw. Then at least it was real. At least it wasn't silence. She closed her eyes, a single tear slipping down. I brushed it away with my thumb before I realized what I was doing. She didn't stop me. She leaned into it, into me, as though the choice had already been made. We stood like that, caught between ruin and release, until she pulled back just enough to look at me again. Her gaze was steady now, no longer hiding, no longer pretending. I can't promise you forever, she whispered. But I can promise you now. The weight of those words crushed me and set me free all at once. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. And in that fragile moment, messy, wrong, beautiful, I knew the choice had been made. Not clean, not simple, but human. We weren't walking away. Not yet. The night stretched longer than it should have. Neither of us spoke much after her last words. We just sat in the dim light of the kitchen, coffee gone cold, the silence carrying more weight than any conversation could. Her hand rested near mine on the table, not quite touching, not quite pulling away. I kept thinking of the message on her phone. The life she had beyond this room, the man waiting for her, the rules we were breaking just by sitting this close. It should have scared me off. It should have made me walk away. But it didn't. Instead, it made me realize how fragile everything was, how little time we might have, how rare it was to feel this seen by someone. I was 22, reckless, unsteady, still figuring out who I was. She was everything I wasn't, grounded, complicated, scarred by the years. And yet, in her eyes, I wasn't just some kid. I was a choice. A dangerous one. But still a choice. She broke the silence first. You deserve better than this, she whispered. I shook my head. I don't want better. I want you. Her lips trembled, not with laughter this time, but with the kind of fear that comes when you know the ground under you is about to give way. She reached for her mug, then set it down again, her hands unable to keep still. Finally, she looked at me, eyes raw. Then promise me one thing, she said. What? When it ends, and it will, don't hate me for it. The words cut, but they were true. And maybe that honesty was the only thing keeping us from completely unraveling. I nodded slowly, though the thought of losing her already ached like a bruise. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't cross that final line. Instead, we sat together in a fragile kind of closeness, a secret tucked between us like a flame too small to warm the whole room, but too dangerous to ignore. Later, when she stood to leave, she paused at the door, hand on the frame, back to me. You've already ruined me, you know, she said softly, almost like a confession to herself. I wanted to tell her she'd ruined me too. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I just watched her walk away, the click of the door echoing in the silence she left behind. I don't know what happens next. Maybe she'll call tomorrow. Maybe weeks will pass in unbearable quiet. Maybe this was the beginning of something reckless and impossible. Or maybe it was only a fleeting moment we'll both carry forever. But I know one thing, I've never felt more alive than when she looked at me like I was the only one in the room. And even if it ends, even if the world finds out, I'll keep that look with me. Always.